The Raven ruled Liverpool's streets with a cold, calculated grip, but she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a sisterhood of ruthless women who shattered every expectation of what a criminal empire looked like. Together, they built the Birds Cartel from the shadows, rewriting the rules of power in a city long dominated by men. This is the story of how they rose and how the police fought back against a new Mafia Matriarchy that changed everything. Liverpool had long been known for its gritty streets and tough neighborhoods, where criminal empires were almost always run by men. For decades, the city's drug trade was controlled by familiar faces, men who operated with brutal force and clear hierarchies. But by 2018, a strange shift began to take shape. Whispers started circulating in police stations and local pubs about a new group challenging the old order. This wasn't just another gang trying to grab a piece of the pie, it was something entirely different. Women once thought to be on the sidelines were now at the center of the action. The so-called Birds Cartel began quietly, almost unnoticed. At first it seemed like isolated incidents. Small drug deals carried out by women, some known locally but not considered dangerous. But slowly patterns emerged. Areas once dominated by male gangs started to see a different kind of control. The dealers were women, the enforcers were women, and even the street bosses were women. What caught the police off guard was not just the presence of women in these roles, but the way they operated. They were organized, efficient, and above all, ruthless. Unlike the traditional gangs who relied heavily on violence and public displays of power, this new cartel was calculated and discreet. There were no flashy cars or loud shootouts. Instead, the Birds Cartel used intimidation, manipulation, and an intricate network of loyalty. They controlled the flow of drugs with precision, ensuring that their business ran smoothly without unnecessary attention. The police initially underestimated them, believing the cartel would collapse under pressure or be outmatched by the established male gangs. But the Birds Cartel defied expectations at every turn. As the months went by, the cartel's influence spread beyond the streets. They infiltrated local businesses, community centers, and even law enforcement through bribery and threats. The women behind this operation didn't just want power, they wanted a complete reshaping of the Liverpool underworld. By the time police started to take notice in full force, the Birds Cartel had already built a solid foundation, one that would prove difficult to break. The era of the male kingpins was ending, and a new, more dangerous force was rising from the shadows, one led by women who would stop at nothing to claim their place at the top. At the heart of the Birds Cartel's rise was a figure known only by her nickname, the Raven. Unlike the loud and boastful male gang leaders, who thrived on showing off their power, the Raven operated in shadows. She rarely appeared in public, and few even knew what she looked like. To the outside world, she was a ghost, silent, calculating, and deadly. But to those within the cartel and the police who hunted her, she was the ultimate mastermind. The Raven's strength lay in her ability to stay hidden while controlling a vast empire. She didn't need to use violence to prove her power. Instead, she wielded influence with precision and patience. Her orders were carried out without question, and her enemies often found themselves destroyed before they even realized they were under attack. She had an uncanny talent for anticipating moves against her, shutting down threats before they could grow. This cold, strategic approach made her far more dangerous than the brash criminals who relied on brute force. What set the Raven apart was her ability to command respect in a world that had long dismissed women as weak or unimportant. She demanded loyalty and rewarded it generously, but was ruthless to anyone who betrayed her. Her network was built not just on fear but on a twisted sense of family among the women who followed her. They shared a common goal: to take control of Liverpool's drug trade and keep it firmly in their hands. The police tried for years to uncover the Raven's identity. They surveilled known cartel members, intercepted communications, followed leads that often turned cold. Despite their best efforts, the Raven remained a step ahead, always disappearing before arrests could be made. It was as if she had eyes and ears everywhere, an invisible force pulling the strings. Her leadership style was unlike anything the city had seen. She wasn't interested in flash or fame. Power for her was a quiet thing. Exercised behind closed doors, the Raven understood that surviving in this brutal world required more than muscle. It demanded brains, patience, and an unbreakable will. And as the Birds Cartel grew stronger, it became clear that the Raven was not just a leader, but the dark heart of Liverpool's most dangerous criminal empire. The Raven's rise to power wasn't a solo effort. Behind her success was an unexpected alliance that brought together women from vastly different backgrounds, each playing a crucial role in building the Birds Cartel into a formidable force. This network wasn't just about crime, it was about survival, loyalty, and rewriting the rules in a world that had long ignored or underestimated them. Among these women were mothers who had once struggled to make ends meet, pushed to the edges of society. They found strength in the cartel, gaining respect and protection they had never known. Others were former addicts who had cleaned up their lives but faced few opportunities to escape poverty or danger. Joining the cartel offered them not just money but a sense of purpose and belonging. Some were even ex-police officers who turned their insider knowledge against the system they once served. Their experience gave the cartel an edge, helping them avoid detection and manipulate law enforcement tactics. This unlikely group worked together with a fierce sense of loyalty. They shared secrets, covered for each other, and operated with a code that bound them tightly. Trust was everything in their world, especially since betrayal meant certain death. The women combined their unique skills to create a network that was both flexible and resilient, able to adapt quickly to police pressure or rival threats. Their cooperation shattered traditional gang structures, where power was often divided by violence and fear alone. Communication within the cartel was sophisticated. They used coded language, secret signals, and trusted couriers to avoid surveillance. Meetings were held in unexpected places, community centers, family homes, even churches, where they blended into everyday life and avoided suspicion. The women also used social media and technology cleverly, sending messages through seemingly innocent posts or private chats. This made it nearly impossible for police to track their movements or uncover their plans. This collective strength and innovation allowed the Birds Cartel to expand rapidly. They took over territories once controlled by male gangs, challenging the old order with a mix of cunning and force. The police found themselves facing not just criminals but a sisterhood united by a shared ambition and unshakable loyalty. This emerging matriarchy was rewriting Liverpool's criminal landscape, and the old rules no longer applied. As the Birds Cartel grew more powerful, the police found themselves at a frustrating dead end. Traditional tactics, raids, informants, and surveillance yielded little progress against a group that operated with careful secrecy and an almost instinctive ability to avoid capture. In 2019, Detective Claire Evans was assigned to lead the investigation. Claire was different from her predecessors. She grew up in Liverpool, understood the streets, and believed that cracking this cartel would require more than just force. It needed strategy and empathy. Claire quickly realized that the Birds Cartel wasn't just another gang. It was a complex network built on trust, loyalty, and a deep understanding of human nature. She knew that to bring them down, the police would need to think like them. Claire assembled a team that reflected this new approach. Experts in psychology, technology, and undercover work, alongside traditional detectives. Her goal was to find cracks within the cartel's seemingly perfect facade and exploit them. One of Claire's first steps was to study the cartel's leadership style. Unlike the loud and aggressive tactics of male gangs, the Birds Cartel operated quietly, blending into everyday life. Claire understood that this made them harder to spot, but also vulnerable in different ways. The women weren't just criminals. Many had personal ties and vulnerabilities the police could use to gain information. Claire focused on building profiles of key members, trying to understand their motivations and fears. At the same time, Claire pushed for greater use of technology. The team employed advanced data analysis to decode patterns in communication and movements. They monitored social media activity, looking for subtle hints or changes in behavior that could lead to arrests. Drones and hidden cameras were deployed in neighborhoods suspected of cartel activity, while cyber experts worked to crack the encrypted messages that passed between members. Claire also recognized the importance of community relations. She worked quietly with local leaders and social workers to gather intelligence and build trust. She knew that some residents feared the cartel's power and might be willing to help if they felt safe enough. Her approach was different. Less about confrontation, more about understanding and patience. Despite these efforts, the Birds Cartel remained elusive. But Claire's new strategy was beginning to unravel their defenses, setting the stage for the first major breakthrough in what would become one of Liverpool's most intense criminal investigations. The first major breakthrough in the investigation came when the police arrested a low-level courier for possession of a small quantity of drugs. At first, the arrest seemed routine, just another small piece of a much larger puzzle. But inside the courier's phone, officers discovered something unexpected: encrypted messages that hinted at a much deeper network. These messages were unlike anything the police had seen before, filled with symbols, coded language, and references that only made sense to those within the Birds Cartel. For weeks, a team of codebreakers and analysts worked tirelessly to crack the encryption. It was a painstaking process, involving trial and error, pattern recognition, and painstaking research into the cartel's methods of communication. Slowly, the hidden meanings behind the messages began to emerge. The police uncovered detailed information about supply routes for drugs coming into Liverpool, secret meeting points scattered throughout the city, and instructions sent from an unknown leader who matched descriptions of the Raven. What made this discovery so important was that it revealed the extent of the cartel's reach. The messages showed not only local activity but connections stretching beyond Liverpool, suggesting that the Birds Cartel was part of a larger, well-organized criminal network. This insight was a game-changer for the police, confirming that they were dealing with a powerful and sophisticated organization, not just a small local gang. With this new intelligence, Claire's team was able to map out parts of the cartel's operations, identifying key players and locations previously unknown to law enforcement. Surveillance intensified, and the police began to move carefully, knowing they were on the verge of striking a serious blow. However, the encrypted messages also showed the cartel's ability to adapt quickly. When one supply route was compromised, others were immediately activated, making it clear that the Raven and her inner circle were always thinking several steps ahead. Despite the risks, the police grew more confident, sending a clear message: betrayal would not be tolerated. The purge created fear and chaos, but it also exposed weaknesses within the cartel. Paranoia grew, and trust among members began to crumble. The once tightly knit sisterhood started to fracture. For the police, this was both a challenge and an opportunity. While it made infiltrating the cartel more dangerous, it also meant that some members were more likely to break under pressure or seek deals to save themselves. Claire's team moved carefully, knowing that any misstep could cost lives. They tightened protection around the informant and used the insider's intelligence to plan targeted raids. However, the situation was fragile. The Raven's ability to stay one step ahead meant that the police had to act quickly, but wisely. This chapter in the investigation revealed the true cost of betrayal in the ruthless world of the Birds Cartel. It was a game of shadows and shifting alliances, where loyalty was everything, and betrayal was deadly. The battle lines were drawn tighter than ever as both sides prepared for the next move in a dangerous and unpredictable war. Following the internal purge, the Birds Cartel became increasingly ruthless and secretive. The Raven, aware that her empire was under threat from both the police and internal betrayal, tightened her grip. Violence escalated dramatically, but it was no longer random or public. Instead, attacks became precise, targeted, and designed to send a chilling message. Witnesses were silenced quickly, with intimidation and fear used as weapons as much as physical force. This shift made the cartel even harder to penetrate, as people who might have helped the police now feared for their lives and remained silent. The streets of Liverpool felt the growing tension. Small businesses connected to suspected cartel members were vandalized, cars were torched, and bodies appeared in back alleys, all signs of the cartel's growing desperation and determination to maintain control. The police noticed a spike in arson and violent assaults linked to the cartel, but the perpetrators stayed in the shadows, making it difficult to gather solid evidence. Detective Claire Evans and her team realized that the usual methods of surveillance were no longer enough. The cartel had adapted to avoid cameras and phone taps by using face-to-face meetings in hidden locations and employing new, more secure communication methods. The police responded by increasing their technological capabilities, using drones and covert audio devices to monitor suspected hideouts. Undercover officers were deployed deeper into the cartel's territory, though the risk of exposure was high. Claire understood that the stakes were higher than ever. Every move the police made had to be carefully calculated to avoid tipping off the cartel. The Birds Cartel's willingness to use violence against anyone perceived as a threat meant that officers and potential informants faced constant danger. The police also worked closely with community leaders to encourage witnesses to come forward, offering protection and support to those willing to break the code of silence. Despite the risks, the police pushed forward. The escalating violence showed just how threatened the Raven felt, and Claire believed this desperation could be exploited. The team prepared for a decisive confrontation, knowing that the coming weeks would be critical in the battle to bring down one of Liverpool's most ruthless and elusive criminal organizations. The police discovery of the Birds Cartel's main base came as a shock. Unlike the grand fortified hideouts often associated with crime lords, this fortress was hidden in plain sight, an ordinary, nondescript building nestled in a quiet Liverpool suburb. On the surface, it looked like any other community center or small warehouse, blending effortlessly into the neighborhood. But inside it was a hub of sophisticated criminal activity, a nerve center from which the Raven and her network directed their empire. Inside the building, officers found a maze of hidden rooms and secret compartments. There were encrypted communication devices, computers running complex software, and multiple cell phones used to manage the cartel's operations. The police uncovered makeshift drug processing labs, where narcotics were refined and packaged before being distributed across the city. Bundles of cash were stashed in hidden safes, along with weapons carefully concealed to avoid detection. What stunned investigators was the level of organization. The Raven's cartel wasn't a chaotic gang running on fear and brute force. It was a well-oiled machine with roles clearly defined. There were people responsible for everything from security and logistics to money laundering and public relations. The discovery revealed how deeply embedded the cartel was in Liverpool's everyday life, operating behind a facade of normalcy that made it nearly invisible to the casual observer. The police realized this base wasn't just a physical location, it was the heart of a network that extended throughout the city. The building served as a meeting point where plans were made, disputes settled, and shipments coordinated. It was a place where the cartel's influence touched everything from local businesses to social services, showing how the group had cleverly entwined itself with the community to avoid suspicion. This find was a turning point for the investigation. It confirmed that the Birds Cartel was more than just a street gang. It was a powerful, organized crime syndicate with a sophisticated infrastructure. The police now had concrete evidence of the cartel's operations, but dismantling it would require careful planning. The hidden fortress was a symbol of how deeply the cartel had rooted itself in Liverpool, and breaking its hold would be one of the most challenging tasks the city's law enforcement had ever faced. The police had been preparing for months to take down the Raven and the Birds Cartel in a coordinated high-risk operation. Everything hinged on timing and precision. Undercover agents had gathered enough intelligence to identify the cartel's key leaders and their meeting place. On a cold, quiet night, squads moved in, surrounding the building that served as the cartel's hidden fortress. The goal was clear: arrest the Raven and dismantle the cartel's leadership in one swift strike. As officers breached the building, the situation quickly escalated into a tense standoff. Inside, the cartel members were prepared. The Raven had anticipated such a move, using her insider knowledge and warnings from informants. The building was rigged with escape routes and traps, allowing some members to vanish into hidden passages just as police stormed the rooms. The police found themselves facing not just a physical battle, but a mental chess game with the Raven, who seemed always 2 steps ahead. Amid the chaos, a shocking betrayal unfolded. The insider who had secretly worked with the police throughout the investigation suddenly turned against them at the crucial moment. Whether motivated by fear, loyalty, or self-preservation, this unexpected act compromised the operation. Police plans were leaked to the cartel in real time, forcing officers to reconsider their approach and to negotiate rather than engage in a full assault. The negotiation was tense and dangerous. The Raven, known for her cold calculation, demanded terms to ensure her escape. She leveraged the lives of her remaining loyalists as bargaining chips. The police, caught between capturing a dangerous criminal and avoiding further bloodshed, reluctantly agreed to a temporary ceasefire. The Raven slipped away into the Liverpool night, disappearing once again into the shadows. Despite the failure to capture her, the police succeeded in arresting much of the cartel's leadership. The core structure of the Birds Cartel was shattered, and their operations severely disrupted. But the Raven's escape left a lingering question: how much longer could the police keep chasing a ghost who seemed always to be 1 step ahead? The raid exposed the limits of law enforcement's reach and set the stage for a prolonged, dangerous battle between the city's criminal queenpin and those determined to bring her down. Though the Raven managed to escape during the raid, the Birds Cartel was left deeply weakened. The arrests of key leaders had struck a serious blow to their operations, disrupting drug supply lines and fracturing the once tight network that had allowed the cartel to thrive. Police seized large quantities of narcotics, cash and weapons, sending a clear message that the cartel's reign was far from unchallenged. Communities across Liverpool felt a brief sense of relief, but many understood this was just a pause in a longer fight. The Raven's disappearance only fueled speculation. Some believed she had fled the country, while others thought she was hiding within the city, quietly rebuilding her empire. The police never stopped searching, keeping the investigation open and officers on alert. They knew that someone as clever and ruthless as the Raven wouldn't vanish without a plan. Rumors spread that she was already grooming a new generation of female leaders, learning from past mistakes and preparing to reclaim power. Despite the setback, the police felt the tide had shifted. The traditional male-dominated crime families no longer held the uncontested grip on Liverpool's underworld. The Birds Cartel had introduced a new kind of power structure, one led by women who were smart, strategic, and unafraid to use both brains and brutality to get what they wanted. This matriarchal rise challenged old assumptions about organized crime and forced law enforcement to adapt their methods. Communities also began to change. The violence and fear that once dominated neighborhoods gave way to cautious hope as social programs and police outreach increased. People started to speak out more, refusing to be silenced by intimidation. Yet the shadow of the Birds Cartel lingered, a reminder that the fight for control was far from over. The story of the Birds Cartel and the Raven ended, for now, as a chilling reminder that crime evolves. The era of the kingpin was over. In its place was a new Mafia Matriarchy, quiet, deadly, and determined. Liverpool faced the uncertain future of a city where power no longer followed old rules, and the battle between police and crime was entering a dangerous